video. That'd be great. Good evening. Thank you for joining us for the February 20th, 2018 meeting of the Buncombe County Commission. Let's begin the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise and join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Last Wednesday, we witnessed the mass shooting at Marjorie Stoneman High School in Parkland, Florida. It's hard to talk about the suffering, fear, and agony that these incidents cause and the pain and unbearable grief that they leave in their wake. At this time, let us hold a moment of silence during which people may pray or reflect on this tragedy that has impacted so many American children, teachers, and their families. But knowing that prayers alone are not enough to stop the killing of so many innocent people in our country, let us also sincerely seek guidance on what actions we must take as leaders, as individuals, to do our duty to better protect our children, families, and communities from such violence. Please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. As we begin the meeting, I'd like to ask everyone who has a cell phone to please silence it or turn it off. I'd like to recognize some of the other elected officials that we have with us this evening. Representative Chuck McGrady, thank you for being with us. We also have, I think, all the members of the Buncombe County delegation, but for one with us, Representative Brian Turner, Representative Susan Fisher, Senator Terry Van Dyne, I think are all with us today. So thank you all for being with us. We appreciate you. And Representative John Ager, how did I miss you? Thank you all for being with us, and thank you all for your service to the people of Buncombe County and Western North Carolina and the state of North Carolina. You know, we just drive downtown Asheville and we get to do this, and you guys have to drive all the way to Raleigh just about every week to do your job. So we are very indebted to you for your service. Thank you. I also know that Tom Hardy from MSD is here with us as well. Thank you, Tom, for being with us, and thanks for your great work at MSD. And thank you all for being with us this evening as well. Let me read the ethics reminder to the board. In accordance with the Code of Ethics adopted by the board, all county commissioners have a duty to obey all applicable laws regarding official actions, to uphold the integrity and independence of the office, to avoid impropriety in the exercise of official duties, to faithfully perform the duties of the office, and to conduct the affairs of the governing board in an open and public manner. Is there any item on the agenda, the outcome of which will have a direct, substantial, and readily identifiable financial impact for any board member? Also, does any board member have a financial interest in any public contract coming before the board today? Seeing none, all board members have a duty and obligation to vote on each matter that is voted on by the board this evening. I also want to recognize our clerk of court, Steve Cogburn, who is also here with us as well. Steve, thanks for your great work. And also Leanne Milton is with us. So, and let me just ask, have I missed any other elected officials who are who are with us? Okay.
Is there an election or something going on this year? Brownie, you got Pat Brown on the school board.
All right, they just keep coming. Keith Young, city council member, and I'm sorry, who else? Pat from the school board's here? Yeah, Pat Bryan, good to see you. All right, thank you. Thank you for working on the school board. All right, this is great. Okay, let's move on to the consent agenda. But for the Hilltop Road item, which we're going to defer to a future meeting, are there any other items that people want to discuss on the consent agenda? If not, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda and follow the remainder of the agenda?
So moved.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, under good news, we have the Sandy Mush 4-H Club 4th anniversary, and Commissioner Belcher is going to help present this item, and we have Jackie Gillespie from Sandy Mush here to accept this. Please come on up, and if there's anybody else who you'd like to have, bring them all up.
And this is only about a third of our group, so. All our kids in the back.
So I get a mic out here now. Okay, that's pretty cool. So I want to steal that from you for just a minute. I know Miss Gillespie back here, and some of these kids, I've seen them out at the Lester Community Center, but let me get over here where I talk to you guys. So if you want to trump all the elected officials, no offense to y'all, no offense to any of them, just let the kids show up, right? This is what we do while we do it. And Sandy Mush, I'll just say that the 4-H. My wife was a big 4-H member, and she grew up on a farm, and what y'all do is amazing. And if you've never had an opportunity to go out to the Sandy Mush Community Center, to go to the Lester Community Center and see any of the events that they have going on, you need to do that. It's just a great place to go, and they do a wonderful job. But this is for a milestone, and I'm going to read this, and then I'm going to see if Miss Jackie has any comments. We'd love to hear from you and tell us what's been going on and with the 4-H. But this is for 40 years of service. The Sandy Mush 4-H Club, on behalf of the citizens of Buncombe County, this board expresses its sincere appreciation and support for the Sandy Mush 4-H Club on the occasion of its 40th anniversary. We commend you for empowering our young people with hands-on projects in health, science, agriculture, and citizenship since 1978. You have truly made this community a better place to live, and we honor and thank you and wish you many more years of success. This, the 20th day of February 2018, Buncombe County Board of Commissioners, signed by the chairman as well as all the other commissioners. So thank you. Give them another big hand. I'm going to let Miss Jackie tell us what's going on.
So thank y'all for having us. I would like to say there was a club back in Sandy Mush, probably back in the 50s or 60s. I think it went inactive. Maybe it was through the school system. Miss Sandra Reeves back here started this club in February of 1978, and we have been continuously active since that time. I am in my 8th year. I took the club in 2011, so this is my 8th year with the club. We currently have 46 members enrolled, so again, this is just about a third of them here. I told him I wasn't going to call on him again. Mr. Steve Duckett, our Extension Director, was the first Sandy Mesh Club president, so we're very proud of that fact. Just a couple of things. We do host a Memorial Day and a Veterans Day service out at the Lester Community Center. We do cleanups up at the fire department in Sandy Mesh. We do some Christmas parades. We support Toys for Tots. We have kids that show livestock, do cooking, enter different projects. We usually hit the Haywood County Fair, the Mountain State Fair in Madison County, and the State Fair in Raleigh. We have kids that do livestock judging. We do some other community service. We get called on a lot if there's a fundraiser or anything going on out in the community and they need a little help. They usually pick up the phone and call us. So the 4-H motto is to make the best better, and that's what we're trying to do with these kids. And if it's okay with y'all, we'd like for them to turn around, maybe face you and do their 4-H pledge for you in closing. So turn around. Okay. So, thank y'all.
Thank you, guys. Facebook is blowing up in Leicester right now.
All right. Thank you. All right. The next item on our agenda is the Legislative Review Committee to study rates and transfer public enterprises. And Commissioner Chuck McGrady, yeah, feel free to join us up here. And thank you for coming to talk to us about this item this evening. Again, thank you to all the members of the North Carolina delegation that are with us as well for your work and for your time this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. Originally, I wasn't actually going to try to come before your commission, since Buncombe County is only indirectly involved in the water and sewer business. However, a recent decision at the MSD board to turn down Henderson County's application to join MSD suggested I probably ought to talk to you also. 7 years ago, I was a county commissioner, and I guess I served with Chairman Newman in different capacities over a long period of time. For those that don't know my background, well, I presently represent most of Henderson County and chair the Budget Committee and the Alcoholic Beverage Commission and the Environmental Review Commission. Before that, I was a Henderson County Commissioner, councilman in Flat Rock, lawyer by training, and ran a summer camp for kids here. I also was the executive director of a little nonprofit environmental organization, and that's when Chairman Newman and I were working on water and sewer issues, I think about 25 years ago. Anyway, I'm glad to be here. I get kidded a lot at the General Assembly by my colleagues because they keep telling me I keep acting like I'm a county commissioner or a city councilman. I've been received the top awards from both the League of Municipalities and the County Commissioners Association. I was County Commissioner of the Year in that association before I went to the General Assembly. So I'm pretty firmly rooted in local government, and I wish my colleagues, particularly those on my side of the aisle, sometimes paid a little more attention to that. Anyway, specifically what I wanted to talk to you about is the Legislative Study Committee that I chair, the Joint Committee to Study Rates and Transfers Public Enterprises. This study committee started out as House Bill 718 related to rates and transfers. Essentially, it would have prohibited counties and cities from establishing differential rates for public enterprises without the approval of the local government commission. It would have also required public enterprise to be accounted for in a separate segregated fund. That bill morphed into just a study committee. I shared the charge of that committee with your chair and manager, and I'm assuming you have seen that. How did the study commission come about? It grew out of legislation dealing with the water system in Asheville. Without getting into the weeds, when the legislation was found to be unconstitutional, I initiated a process to try to resolve some long-standing issues between Henderson County and the city of Asheville. By bringing the parties together to talk, I hope to avoid the need for any other legislation. One of the issues was representation. Henderson County had no representation on MSD, and 40% of Asheville's water customers lie outside the city limits. Of course, as I quickly learned, nearly 70% of Hendersonville's water customers lie outside the Henderson County limits, city limits. Over the past year or so, I've worked with the county and the city, and my understanding is that at least at the lawyer level, the city and the county have come to an agreement to update the agreement that they already have in place. And I've already urged the Henderson City Council that I met with a week ago or so, and we'll be meeting with the Asheville City Council next week. And my hope is that we will hopefully put the water issue to bed as it relates to Henderson County and the city of Asheville simply by an agreement between the two entities. So while this study committee started out focused on Asheville and Western North Carolina, it really is addressing a broader issue, and let me try to paint that picture for you. Many of the sewer and water systems across the state became municipal systems because they were originally part of a mill town, and the mill put in the water and the sewer, and then it became a municipal system, and then unfortunately in a lot of cases that mill closed down. The water and sewer systems oftentimes, frankly, were not sustainable in their fashion, in the way they worked. And what surprised me actually a little bit was I had both when I put forward the study, I had both the Department of Environmental Quality and the Treasurer's Office come to me and say, you've hit upon a huge issue here. From the Treasurer's Office side, that's the local government commission side, they were concerned just about the finances. Some of these systems are not sustainable. They're not all mill towns. They estimate that somewhere between 30 and 60 municipalities across the state and counties across the state are functionally bankrupt because of their water and sewer systems. And what's happened in part in some places is that in an effort to save it, these local governments have started extending their water lines, charging differential rates, and then using the money to upgrade their water system or to run their city or county. And from the treasurer's side, that just wasn't something financially that's responsible. My background is in environmental protection. DEQ came to me also. And their issue was that these systems are not sustainable. And periodically they fail. And suddenly the state has to come in and put a few $100,000 to deal with the issue at hand. But it's just a Band-Aid. The system is not sustainable. And so both of these state government departments have basically said, can we create some incentives or even some sticks to cause some of these things to merge together? We need more regional water and sewer. And so that's really what we're about. I expect we'll have a few meetings this spring. We actually had our first meeting about a week ago or so. The first two meetings will probably be educational because enterprise funds are really tough, and there's a lot of different types of them, and our mandate is rather broad. But we'll move from educational at some point to making some recommendations. I don't anticipate any action of any sort in the short session. We're really setting up for the long session. I will be working with the County Commissioners Association, and all I'd urge you to do is stay attentive, and if you've got any concerns, although I don't believe this will affect Buncombe County or the city of Asheville. At least I'm not aware of it. The one issue we do have out there is the representation issue of some sort, and we're bringing in the School of Government and looking at other states and figuring out is there ways to address that. The water systems, if a private water system is regulated by the Public Utility Commission generally, and a municipal or county water system is assumed to be regulated by the city or the county, and also assumed that all those customers are also constituents, and if they frankly don't like the water or they don't like the cost of the water or whatever, they have the ability to vote out the mayor or the city council. Well, the problem is, and let's pick on Hendersonville, 70% of Hendersonville's customers are outside the municipal boundaries. In other words, those customers have no recourse if they don't like what's happening. And so I don't know what the answer to that question is. We're going to look at it. I don't know what's going forward. As I indicated, the recent MSD vote caused me to ask to be heard. Frankly, I was real surprised by that vote, particularly after I put forward legislation in the last session to address concerns that Asheville would lose a seat on the MSD board if Henderson County were to join that board. Those concerns were raised by Chairman Newman, it were raised by Mayor Mannheimer. I thought I had fixed it. The entire Buncombe and Henderson delegation all supported it, and I was very surprised with the MSD issue. I believe what I'm going to do with that, I'm going back to make sure I understand all the history here, and I don't intend to wade into that unless you've got some questions, but I will probably write you a letter at some point before the short session, which is now set for mid-May, sort of setting out what the concerns are. At this time, all I'm asking for is for you to be attentive, give me any input on the study committee that I chair, and be open to the possibility that you can resolve the MSD question as between the local governments. And that's my hope. And I'll stop right there, Mr. Chairman, to take questions. I'll try to stay for the public comment piece. As I explained to some of you, my wife just had surgery, and I'm going to head back there. I can't spend the night, but I'll try to stay for at least a little bit if I can. And the questions on this topic or anything else, if you want to ask them. So
All right. Well, thank you for that presentation. Let's just kind of keep it focused on this, 'cause in light of your time this evening. So I'm sure there's a lot of other topics that'd be fun to talk about sometime, but let's do that on another
well,
day.
invite me back or invite me for coffee, and
Sure.
I'll be perfectly
Sure.
fine to talk on any subject.
All right. Well, commissioners, any questions at this time?
As an MSD board member, I wanted to remind everyone that as it is now, the city of Asheville has 3 members, Buncombe County has 3 members, Woodfin has 1, Black Mountain has 1, and Biltmore Forest has 1, and the vote was to add 3 seats. So it was more a question of disproportionality than not liking Henderson County. So that was my thought about it.
If I could respond, there is one of the entities that have 2 votes, and I think if you put it on a per capita basis, you would Asheville, one of those towns would probably get 1 vote, and Asheville would have 43 votes if you did it strictly on a per capita basis. Henderson County and Buncombe County have different histories when it comes to sewer. So if we had had the same history that you had, we probably would have ended up with 3 votes anyway, because the sewer's in Mills River and in Fletcher and in Henderson counties. But again, I don't want to, I hear you. I heard that really loud and clear. I just, I wish I had heard it back when I could fix it. as opposed to have what happened here, based on communications I had with various public officials.
So I just have a comment. I'm not going to get any questions in the history because I'm very familiar with it. And I too served on the MSD board with Commissioner Frost. But I want to thank you for coming. It's refreshing to me for anybody from the legislature or an outside representative to come in here and provide information to us. And so I'm very grateful for it. And I thank you for coming.
I appreciate that. I'm trying to model different behavior than some in my.
Thank you for coming as well. Can you speak to the North Carolina Supreme Court ruling around the water issue and how the explorations of this committee would sort of interact with that ruling?
I don't think it really does. That didn't specifically delve down into public enterprise funds or, again, I'm hopeful, Commissioner, that we will, through a memorandum of understanding between Asheville and Henderson County, resolve whatever differences are there. In the MSD process, as two of your commissioners know, we had folks stand up and suggest that this committee was the way that Representative McGrady was going to seize Asheville's water system again. And I'm here to talk to you directly to explain that that just isn't true. It's just rhetoric. And rather than try to deal with it in the newspaper or something, I figured let me come talk to the commissioners. And I'm talking to the two other councils and one other commission all over the course of 2 weeks and basically saying the same thing. Thank you
All
for your
right,
time.
any other questions from the commission? All right, Representative McGrady, thank you again. I guess at this time, I'd just like to ask if any of our other elected officials who are here, thank you for taking time. If any of you have any questions or comments, I'd just invite you to, you feel free to share them now. If you don't, that's fine too. I know, so, all right. All right, and again, Representative McGrady, thank you for being here. I understand that you need to get home pretty soon, but I will open it up. If there's any other members of the public who have questions or comments, we'll take them now. Mr. Yelton, yes.
Grady, I will be talking to you directly, okay, later on. I'm not going to spend time here. As far as I'm concerned, you need to go be with your wife. I want to make some general comments because in 1976, I worked for Land of Sky Regional Council. I was here when MSD was formed. I've watched MSD take over sewer lines that were all to pieces and full of crap because the local politicians in this area wouldn't handle them. The human waste and everything in Asheville, including the stormwater from the top of the mountains to the streets and from basements and buildings, was running straight into the French Broad River. They have done a good job, but they have taxing of power. And they've used that very good so far, and they had to do it because they had to map the lines. They didn't know where the lines are at. Now, we all know the problem between Hendersonville and Asheville. It was because Asheville promised Hendersonville a long time ago, you can build a wastewater treatment plant here downstream because guess what? Crap goes downhill, and the guy at the bottom catches it. And all of a sudden, Asheville backed out of that deal, and that's the very property that you all are having to deal with now and trying to sell. And that's the hard feelings that's there. So that's what you're trying to overcome. I would like to spend some time with you because I can show you how you can make your charges for sewer and water completely engineeringly correct and proper. You have a fixed cost of every system. You also have a cost of pumping or bringing the sewer to the plant. You also have a cost of pump stations. So you figure that cost and you make your charge for that water or for getting that crap to the wastewater treatment plant based upon actual experience and actual cost. It can be done. I've made presentations about this in front of engineers. It's a simple matter of calculation. And if everybody's paying their fair share, I don't see why Asheville can't get along with Hendersonville and why nobody can't get along together if everybody's paying their fair share. So again, it's a matter of transparency and allocating the cost where the cost should go, and that can be done. Now, the hard part's going to be the thing that kept this area from treating its wastewater, and the same thing that kept us from consolidating the water and the sewer using the same equipment and cutting the cost of operation, which can be done. And I know the history of both the water and the sewer. And at one time, we had utility districts in Buncombe County, folks, that the county had put the sewer and water to that area. But you had one utility district in this area that had more water and more people on water than anybody else. And they were paying less than anybody else because it was a political situation. And Mr. Grady, I can give you that history if you'd like to have it, okay?
Thank you. Mr. Rice.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. One thing about Grady today, he don't get to hear from people like us down there. We can't come and chew on his ear like we do you. So that's the difference. Young's got your feet on the ground. Young's like the Marines. You can smile today if you like. I mean, you know, I just don't like him frowned. You might be doing the frown after I get through. We have heard what we've heard Mr. Grady say, the nuclear option. We have heard it today. Now I'm going to explain something. The wells at a private home, look out. They tried to be taxed before and they weren't. Now the nuclear option is on the board. Just keep an eye on it. Don't look short term, look long term. He's already told you about all the water in the county being 70% and 40% out there to us. Now, the third thing, Duke Energy. Duke Energy, the reevaluation every year determines the rate that the county commission is going to give the county on it, Duke Energy, our power bills every month depends on the utility commission. That utility commission also is related to the property tax in Buncombe County. When you have a reevaluation year, depending on how you rate, then it can go up or down. You got it? Now, I know it's over your head sometimes. The sales tax ratio study that you get that's got the numbers on it that you get like 84.5% before you can reevaluate and all this stuff, or you'll get a letter from Department of Revenue. Pay attention. It's all about money. Pay attention. The ratio study, we had a big fight over this, and I mentioned it. Do not raise property taxes, and you did it anyway. You know why? Because you're too greedy. Us tax people need a break here, you know? Now, my last comment. You always need a parting thought. There are more ways than one to seize a person's water. Woo. Say amen.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? All right, thank you. And Representative McGrady, thank you again for being here, and to all the legislators who represent Western North Carolina, thank you. And we do look forward to following and having a dialogue on these important issues, and to thank you again. And best wishes to your family. All right. The next item on our agenda is the Lee Walker Heights tax credit bonds. And we have David Nash here to talk to us about that. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. I'm here with Gene Bell and Scott Dedman. We got the big guys here tonight because everybody else is back at the office working. But we're happy to be here and happy to announce, if you haven't already read it in the paper, that we did get a tax-exempt bond and 4% tax credit award from the State Housing Finance Agency. So we have the second major portion of our funding for the project in place. The first major portion was the local funding that's being provided by you and by the City Council, and we thank you very much for that, and by the Housing Authority. The tax credits are a piece of it, and then there will be a mortgage loan on the property that's paid from the revenue of the property, and that's the next step as we go forward. The tax credits were the big competitive process that we needed to go through, and they will fund, we estimate, about $12 million of the total project cost, so about 1/3 of it. I don't know if Crystal Reed was able to come tonight. We have met with the residents and had a really good turnout actually last Thursday for a meeting of residents talking about what's now the likely relocation. We're asking people not to jump the gun, not to be worried about it. We will be providing another apartment in our inventory that's equal to or better than the one that they're staying in now, and they will have the right to return after the new development is complete. The relocation will probably start sometime this summer, although we are having, last Thursday was an information session, and we are having an open house with Mountain Housing Opportunities property management firm in mid-March for the residents who are interested in possibly moving to a mountain housing development to get more information about that. We've also been working with the designers and construction. Of course, costs of construction are going up and interest rates are going up, so we're having to make everything fit within the budget. But the designers came late last fall and presented a video presentation of what the new apartments will look like to the residents and to the Housing Authority Board, and I think Max has that video here. We'll let it kind of flow through one time and then maybe go back and pause. It starts at the south end of the site. These are the 2- and 3-story buildings that the residents had requested. They're around a sort of central lawn area with a playground. And as you come to the north end of that section, the biggest building, which is right at the intersection there where the office will be, and the community room and the after-school program room, possibly some other supportive services will be in the ground floor there. This building has about 100 units, and then at the far north end of the site, near Cox Avenue, is another 64-unit, 4-story building. This is primarily 1-bedroom and 2-bedroom units. So, actually, if you'd like to see it again, I'll play it again, but I was able to kind of talk us through it on that round, so I can probably save you some time by not doing that.
I think we're good.
Happy to answer any questions that you have right now. And again, thank you very much for your support. It was critical in the success in getting the Housing Finance Agency funds awarded.
I just want to again say thank you. This is transformational work, and we so appreciate it.
Thank you.
How many families will be relocated?
I think right now we have 92 families in residence. Many of those are single individuals, one-person households. I can't remember honestly, but I think about 50 of those families are families with children.
And they will have the opportunity to move back if they choose.
We'll have the opportunity to move back if they choose, unless they decide they like where they are and decide to stay there.
All right, well, David, this is great news, and so we're very appreciative of you and everyone on the team for putting this vision forward and developing a great project, and then going out and and helping to make sure that we can actually secure the financing to implement this. I think this is it's the biggest investment that the county, at least during the time I've served in local government, I think this is the biggest investment the county's ever made in affordable housing. But as has been pointed out many times, this is much more than just an affordable housing development, which is very important in its own right. It's going to accomplish a lot of other great things for the neighborhood and for our community. And I'm so excited that the county can partner with with Asheville and the Housing Authority and all the different partners that have come together for this. It really, I completely agree. Sometimes we say things are transformational. Maybe we use that term too much, but this project truly is and will be. So we're really excited about it, and we look forward to working with you to see it come to fruition.
Thank you, and thank you for your partnership. We couldn't do it without you.
All right. Are there any other folks who want to comment on this item as well while we're on this issue? All right. Thank you again. And Gene Bell, great to see you as always, and Scott Dedman and everyone from Mountain Housing. Thanks to all of you for your great work on this. Okay. The next item on our agenda is the public hearing. This is the rezoning request from Heath White of Zen Tubing, and Debbie Trumpy is going to present this item.
Chair Newman, actually Nathan Pennington, interim planning director. I think there's actually going to be a request. Is the attorney for the applicant is here to request a continuance. I'll just let her speak to you guys about that.
Okay.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm actually the office manager, not the attorney for Zen Tubing. Mr. White sends his apologies. Last week, a personal matter came up which called him out of town this week. We contacted Debbie Truby's office to see about getting a continuance, and she asked that we show up and ask for the continuance.
Okay. Are there any objections to continuing this? All right.
No.
All right. Well, we will work with, you'll hear from our staff, and we'll
Okay.
schedule another time to follow.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
the reason we're doing it this way is because this is a public hearing, and by zoning requirements, by state statute and our ordinance, public notice was sent and made for this public hearing, so it would be up to the board to continue this meeting
Okay.
to a time and date certain. Then we don't have to go through the expense of
Do we need a
renoticing.
motion?
Is there a proposed date for rescheduling it?
Be March 6th or April 3rd, depending on when.
Do we need a motion?
Yes, please.
March
You-
6th is fine with Mr. White.
I'll make a motion to continue this until March 6th.
Second.
All right. Further discussion? All right. We'll take comments on the motion to continue. Yes, sir. Come on up to the microphone, please. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I represent David Todd, and I represent UNC Asheville. Is there an opportunity for public comment now, or would that be pushed into the continuance?
You may comment now.
Thank you. Would you like me to do that now?
Yes.
Thank you. I'd like to read a piece of information that I believe has been presented previously by Ms. Melissa Acker of UNC Asheville. But UNC Asheville owns a property directly across the road from the proposed rezoning. The property encompasses approximately 35 acres of a very rare and sensitive habitat known as the Sandy Bottom Nature Preserve. We would like the board to be well informed of the ecological importance of this property. The site primarily consists of floodplain communities that include montane alluvial forest, marshes, and a swamp forest bog complex. The southern Appalachian mountain bog is one of the rarest and most imperiled habitats in the United States. Less than 20% of the mountain bogs that once existed still remain. Bogs are breeding habitats for many species of amphibians, especially salamanders. The southern Appalachians have a great diversity of salamanders, have the greatest diversity of salamanders in the nation. In particular, the Sandy Bottom Bog is rich in diversity of amphibians and reptiles that are associated with mountain wetlands and has more species of salamanders than perhaps any area of comparable size in the world. The turtle diversity is also exceptional for the Blue Ridge Province. Sandy Bottom is home to several rare species. The North Carolina Natural Heritage Program lists Sandy Bottoms as a significant natural heritage area with a very high rating in terms of need for protection. We respectfully request that any planning in this area is mindful of the need for protecting the Sandy Bottom Bog. I would like to also add that the North Carolina Department of Transportation is also proposing a realignment and widening of 191 in this direct area. They're currently conducting an archaeological survey of our site, so we're concerned of the combined impact of both of these things and just want to express our our concerns in particular about the property. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Don't see any other comments. So there's a motion to continue this to their meeting on March the 6th. Any further discussion from the board? All in favor of the motion to continue to March 6th, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And to the folks who are interested, thank you for sharing your comments. Feel free to return when we take up the matter again at that meeting. All right. The next item on our agenda is the Juvenile Resources Update, and Rachel Nygaard will be presenting this item. Rachel, thank you.
Good evening. There was a typo on the agenda that you were reading from. It's the Justice Resource Update. My name is Rachel Nygaard, and I am your Director of Strategic Partnerships. And in that role, I have an opportunity to be a part of helping to tackle some of the big, complex systemic issues in our community, like affordable housing, ensuring that everyone has access to an affordable place to live. Issues like building a robust and thriving workforce that's inclusive and diverse. Issues like preventing and responding to opioid addiction, and issues like justice, like rethinking what criminal justice looks like here in our local community. And so this, as a strategic priority, we're celebrating an anniversary. Today it has been 1 year since we came before the Board of Commissioners and brought to you a proposal for some strategies for what we can do to push forward this work. Max, do you have slides? Thank you. So today we'll update you about the work that has happened, celebrate the impact that that's having on the lives of people that we serve, and talk to you a little bit about the path forward. Before we do that, we look back just a little bit. We came before you a year ago and talked to you about pressures in the system, experiencing increases in the number of people that are in our local county detention facility, and drivers, like the number of women who are involved in the criminal justice system, people impacted by mental illness and by substance use, really driving those numbers. We came before you and talked to you about how Buncombe has been a leader in criminal justice and justice resources for decades. We have a lot of the best practices in place that communities use in this work, and we have local models to turn to, like the Family Justice Center and like the C3 at 356 mental health model. While we are a leader, we still have a system that has a need for more coordination, more effective coordination across those silos, and our system has some gaps. And so we brought to you a strategy that had several components to continually prioritize public safety, holding people accountable and keeping the community safe, while implementing approaches that help address the underlying needs that motivate people to get involved in the criminal justice system, the poverty, the substance abuse, the trauma, and other impacts. So we brought to you a proposal to formalize some coordination, invest in a Justice Resource Coordinator, establish a Justice Resource Advisory Council, fill in with some programs and some infrastructure support, and we'll dig into some of those in just a second. Before we do that, just reminding that we continue to be thankful for the Board of Commissioners' support keeping this as a priority. In December, you voted again 7-0 to keep this as a strategic policy issue for the board going forward, and so we thank you for that. I am going to turn the microphone over to Tiffany Ihanacho, who, when we left here on February 21st, 2017, one of our first items of business was going to those national models and pulling up job descriptions for Justice Resource Coordinators and getting that job posting. And it's been a journey, and we're glad to have Tiffany here at the helm, and who will give us an update.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. It's a pleasure to be here on this year anniversary, and I'll just talk briefly about the work that we've been doing, the formation of the Justice Resource Advisory Council, You all were privy to the opening, and so glad that you were there for the Justice Resource Center to talk about the work we've been doing at the center, the improvements and enhancements made to pretrial services, and how we looked at case processing to help move cases along through the criminal justice system to reduce those times that people are awaiting trial and to reduce some of the length of stays in the detention center. So our Justice Resource Advisory Council meets monthly, and they've been hard at work to look at best practices and find ways that are effective and efficient when we think about improving our criminal justice system. Our representation of the council consists of our resident Superior Court judge, our Chief District Court judge, representatives from our law enforcement agencies, Buncombe County Sheriff Department and APD, Clerk of Court, who's with us today, Chief Magistrate, our District Attorney, Public Defender. We have representatives from North Carolina Division of our Department of Public Safety, Community Supervision, and Juvenile Justice. We have representatives from our local defense bar and regional mental health and substance abuse and disability managed care system or organization VIA. We also have representation, just want to make sure I don't miss anybody, from our Buncombe County departments such as the County Manager's Office, Pretrial Services, Performance Management, and the Bureau of Identification. So they're coming together monthly to talk about how we can make our system better. And one of those things was getting the Justice Resource Center up and running. And as Rachel shared with you, kind of the timeline of where we are today is getting that center up and running, using best practices, having kind of that same model that we use from the Family Justice Center is having multiple partners in one location, providing an array of services, including connecting people to resources, being able to offer 3 diversion programs, and even connecting those who are returning to our community from incarceration from our state prisons back into our community, connecting them with housing, education, employment, and transportation. All of these efforts are to try to reduce people's contact with the criminal justice system and give them a more self-sufficient and sustaining life while rethinking and motivating change in their behavior. So since our opening, we've served nearly 400 individuals, and I had kind of talked to the staff, many of whom are with us today, about what is something that you would want the commissioners to hear about our success. And they all started giving stories about the people that we're impacting. And I said to myself, wow, that's 400 people or 400 stories that we can tell the commissioners. And it's unique because we're at one central location, and amongst all of the feedback I got, people felt that this was a safe place. This is the first time they can walk through the courthouse and have less anxiety and probably have more of an outlook for their future, because they might come up and be referred through their probation officer to help connect them with housing. Then our case managers, I believe Kendra's here with us, can help link them with housing, but they might be talking about, dang, I don't know where my next meal is coming from. I'm working 3rd shift and I don't make a livable wage. And so Kendra can say, hey, I have someone, maybe you can meet Elizabeth, who's our income maintenance caseworker. She can do a food stamp application. We can see if you're eligible. So we're getting expedited applications through for our clients. They also can connect with AB Tech, who's on site. And actually one client in particular, he came through and he was talking about that 3rd shift job. So our person that works at AB Tech, Philip, who cannot be with us today, but Shelly is representing AB Tech. He got them enrolled in a CDL, so he's working through his class to become a truck driver. And during that time period of him securing that course, he was able to get a job working 1st shift and getting a livable wage. So these are some of the lives that we're impacting. And as you can see, we are steadily increasing the amount of clients that we're serving. As it relates to pretrial services, thanks to your investment, we were able to hire, or pretrial was able to hire 3 additional case managers and increase their units as it relates to electronic monitoring. Why is that so important? Is because these individuals are awaiting trial. They can do so safely in our communities, still maintaining their jobs and contacts with their family, and we do have a sense of safety with measures for those high-risk needs individuals. As we look at jail reduction strategies and how to effectively manage our jail populations, the court may use electronic monitoring more as a tool, and even so, using pretrial services to be that connection in the community for supervision. And I believe over the past year or so, pretrial has seen an increase in the amount of cases assigned to them. So pretrial, during this year, they were also able to leverage outside resources. They were awarded a safety and justice grant through the MacArthur Foundation, and this was specifically for working with those domestic violence defendants. And they developed a protocol with the help of our court partners and our members with the Coordinated Community Response for DV. So again, as we look for different strategies about managing our jail population and the effectiveness of our criminal justice system, we're trying to link and connect with national partners and people who are doing this work across our country. And what's one thing that to highlight is we're one of 20 jurisdictions selected for this innovation grant across the country. As it relates to case processing, your investments went to jail-based prosecution, being able to put assistant district attorney and a victim witness legal assistant into the jail. And this really helps with case processing as it gives real-time interactions for those sitting in custody as they await trial. Their attorneys can talk to the district attorney about how to kind of move this case along. It actually replaced the current H&I felony plea calendar that was in process a while ago. And so the goal is within 7 days of an attorney's request to get a plea deal, this disposition can happen in Superior Court. So this happens about 80 times since the start of a jail-based prosecution. Back in October, I believe the Office of District Attorney and the partnership Buncombe County started a community access portal, and this was to kind of streamline and automate the court process. So essentially, this reduces the time that a case is disposed of in court and giving the sheriff and the detention center the order or the court record to release the individual, because they're not going from office to office to office and then sending it over. So essentially, this can happen over the weekend. They can dispose of a case. The detention facility gets that through electronic email or correspondence, and they can release that person from custody. So again, this has occurred over 300 times, and this is a great way to reduce that length of stay when it comes to disposition and how long they have to wait until they get released. So we've done a lot of work this year, but we still have a lot more to do. Our pretrial population is down roughly 8 to 9%, but our female in custody remains high. That's due to a variety of issues, but as we look towards managing our jail population, we can look at gender-specific programs and outcomes to really target getting females into custody for the ones that really need to be there. Another important issue is our substance abuse detox protocols. Those are ones that come into the facility that have to be medically monitored due to alcohol withdrawal or opiate withdrawals. And it's great to have our partnership with VIA, our local management care organization, to be present with that council so we can really look at best practices of how to diverting people with mental illness and substance abuse out of our system. So this year, in 2017, it was up 60%. And there was a few slides, I guess, in the beginning where it showed that the detox protocols from 15 to 16 were 30%. So it increases and rises every year. Our next steps, as a council, we plan to work towards creating an improvement plan that will discuss goals, objectives, and also timelines of when we can see and target our effectiveness for our criminal justice system. This could include jail reduction strategies. This can include gender-specific programs, as well as just moving cases along. So just really enhancing the work that we've been doing. Improving our data collection and data analysis, learning from other jurisdictions. One unique part about the work we're doing, we're not the only ones in the country, and so we can learn from others, and they can learn from us as well. A part of the innovation grant was going to a convenient when you meet different jurisdictions doing this work and learning from them. And then again, there are other opportunities for funding, and so we'll continuously seek ways to improve our criminal justice system. I have a few representatives from our council to speak about the work we do. Our public defender, Leanne Milton, ADA Rodney. You guys want to come and share quickly? I'm not sure if I'm missing anybody. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Leanne Melton, the Chief Public Defender for Buncombe County. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. On behalf of the Public Defender's Office, thank you for prioritizing issues regarding our criminal justice system. Mass incarceration in the United States is a serious problem. The United States has 5% of the world's population, but 25%, nearly 25% of its prisoners. Thank you for investing in solutions. Thank you for investing in treatment and resources that will help address issues that bring many individuals into our criminal justice system, specifically poverty, trauma, mental illness, and substance use, and structural inequities. Thank you for your commitment to a diversion program that allows for equal access regardless of an individual's wealth. The Public Defender's Office shares in your commitment to partner in criminal justice goals like protecting public safety while helping people address their underlying needs that cause them to be justice involved. The Public Defender's Office is committed to data-driven, accountable, collaborative approaches to rethinking justice. Thank you again for your valuable investment in our criminal justice system.
Good evening. My name's Rodney Hasty. I'm representing the District Attorney Todd Williams. He was unable to be here tonight, but he wanted me to send me over to be sure to tell you how much we appreciate the county's investment in the Justice Resource Center. One of the, in addition to just saying thank you, I mean, I think it's helpful to have an illustration, of exactly what we're talking about. I've practiced criminal law for 21 years now. It's hard to believe. On the prosecution side and on the defense side. And the state, the legislature comes up with the criminal law. And because it's applicable all through the state, it's very much a one-size-fits-all, way of addressing crime. I mean, it comes from the state level down, and it's the same for everyone. And one example that I wanted to use is, according to the legislature, possession of any amount of heroin is a felony. Even if it's just a little bit of dust in the corner of a baggie, a lot of people get charged with felonies for that. I mean, and just possessing that amount of heroin, and that's an operation of state law. That's not anything that we can change or do anything about. And I assign all of the felony cases in our office, and this is an example that I'm familiar with, is because that's where those cases collected. When they would come up, I would look at a case like that where a person with little or no record clearly just had, a very small amount of, controlled substance like heroin that was a felony by operation of law. And my choice was whether to go ahead and assign it to one of the other assistant DAs to indict and prosecute, because that's what the state law provides for. That's what the one-size-fits-all approach provides for. And the reason that I wanted to use that example is because we would not have any other options were it not for the Justice Resource Council. This is what the JRC is for. It is for recognizing problems like that and then coming up with solutions that don't involve the state's one-size-fits-all approach. And now, for people that fit that category, they have a very small amount with very little record. It's a felony by operation of law. We now have a Sunrise diversion program that those people can go to and as they should, get help for their addiction problem. We would not have had that option before. We don't have it under the state, but we do have it now under the Justice Resource Center. And for those reasons, we just appreciate so much the investment of time and funds that the county has invested in this project. Thank you.
Thank you for hearing our update, and we would be we'd be happy to answer any questions.
I want to say I'm truly humbled by the work that's been done. It was just a year. And to back up the conversation, I think it was a year ago, last January, Commissioner Newman and I met with Mandy, and because we were faced, there were some in the community that wanted us to build a new jail for $48 million. And that's when we said there's got to be other ways. And you all worked miracles to come up with, one, not building a new jail, but two, a benevolent, data-driven system that really, really helps people in the most profound sense that don't have an option. I think we can all agree that for somebody to be in jail because they don't have money isn't equitable. And what you've done, the amount of work that you and Tiffany have done with this huge organization has been extraordinary. So I humbly thank you.
I'd just like to chime in and express thanks to everyone also for showing up this evening. Y'all have done incredible work to translate what was on paper a year ago into living, breathing services, and really appreciate this opportunity to get updates about it. I think what I've heard folks across Commission express is ensuring that everyone in Buncombe County has equal access to a justice system that treats them equitably and fairly, and that someone's income is not the differentiator between what their experience is like in that process. So we know it takes a tremendous amount of vision and moxie and hard work and long, late nights to give lift to something like this that's as innovative as this. So thank you all very much for that hard work and for the really remarkable collaboration across a lot of different agencies and entities and parts of our judicial system. Thank you all.
I want to remind everybody, too, it was a 7-0 vote, and I don't think I was ever more proud of this commission than we had that 7-0 vote on this.
And what I would like to say to add to it, to thank you, because me being one of the new commissioners on board, I was proud to walk into the work that you had already started, and just to be here to help close the deal, so to speak. But what I really hate is that because of the publicity we've been getting this year, what we should have on the front page of the paper every day is what you folks have done, because you're really making a difference in Buncombe County. And this is going to be something that will pay off for us for years to come. And it sure is a lot cheaper to fund what you're doing than $48 million for a new jail that I question if we need any. We don't need it. Now, I would never vote for that. But I want to thank you for what you do and keep up the good work. And like I said, we need to do a better job of letting the community know what you're doing and how quick. That's what surprised me, is how quick, how fast you've made the changes that we can see. Because I thought it would take a lot longer to get off the ground than what you're doing. But keep up the good work, and I pledge, as long as I'm on the commission, you will get the support you need, because we will all be fighting for it. And we have a team here that's backing, 7 votes started it, and you still have 7 votes today. I think I can comfortably say that for all of the team here, our commissioners. But I'd like to say again, thanks, and keep up the good work, and whatever you need from us, let us know.
It's an honor and a privilege to be a part of.
All right.
Yeah, I want to thank you. I want to thank you also, and I want to echo Commissioner Whiteside and Frost that this was that these efforts are supported across the board. And I heard the term central location. It reminded me of the
Family Justice Center?
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Yes.
That's what happens when you got a lot of things on your mind. Sometimes you forget some. But it reminded me of the Family Justice Center and how all of this works together, and how when you are able to help individuals that need that, and in relation to the law and to the state, these are nonviolent people that need help. Right. That's what this is. This is not keeping people that that are not in that category and putting them back on the street. What this is doing is making sure that people get help And it's also avoiding stress becoming toxic stress. And I thought of, before when we had the Family Justice Center, and all of these are working together to make our county a better place to live. And it is saving resources. And that's just a benefit. It's not why we're doing it. We're doing it because it's the right thing to do. And you've been able to figure out a way to get results, and in a short period of time. And I'm glad it's going so well, and we just want to continue to send positive thoughts and work and prayers and help in that direction. It'll make Buncombe County a better place. Thank you.
All right, Rachel, everyone, thank you for what you're doing, and keep it up, and keep the innovative ideas coming forward. And we look forward to continuing to work with all of you. Thanks. Okay, the next item on our agenda is the report from Budget and Finance, and Diane Price and Tim Flora will, I think, be tag teaming this one.
So Chairman, Vice Chair, Commissioners, back in October, I made a commitment to you and the public to start providing quarterly financial information. And because of that commitment and your direction to the county manager to provide regular financial updates, I'm pleased to present to you tonight with the quarterly financial report for the quarter ending December 31st, 2017. And I don't know, Max, if you've got the presentation. They probably want to see that as opposed to seeing me on the screen. There we go. And you can probably just go ahead and move to the next slide. So this report is posted online for you and the public's viewing pleasure. It contains about 40 pages of exciting reading, facts and figures. No worries, tonight I will not read you this report. Instead, I will sort of give you a high-level overview of what is in that report. There is a general fund budget versus actual with year-end projections. There's also a summary of major revenue sources, current net county cost projections, a fund balance analysis, as well as information on debt and investments. Also in the back, you will find a summary of budget amendments to the general fund that you as the board approved since June, that sort of summarizes all the budget amendments to the general fund to date. At this time, I want to thank Diane and her staff, and particularly my staff, for the ongoing efforts on this initiative. I have amazing staff who produce amazing product, and this is a testament to their commitment to the organization. And so with that, I'm going to hand it off to Diane, who's going to hit some of the highlights of the financial report. But I will say again that this report is posted online. It is on the finance page. We probably will make it available, probably a link from the budget page as well, and also probably from our transparency site. So I would encourage you all, when you get a chance, or the public when they get an opportunity, to peruse this. And certainly if there are any questions from you or the public at any time, we are certainly open to respond to those questions. But I will now turn it over to Diane to sort of give you some of the highlights of the budget aspect.
Thank you, Tim. Since this is the first time we've done a budget to actual presentation to the board, I did just want to briefly go over like when and how we do that. So for the first 3 months of the fiscal year, we're actually still projecting the prior fiscal year because we still get revenues through September. So we actually start in this fiscal year after the first quarter closes. So while we're continually monitoring the budget from July 1st on, once we start the projection, we look at historical trends. We really rely heavily on our subject matter experts in the departments. And then once we get to June, when we're a little closer to the fiscal year ending, we actually start doing weekly projections. So I think you have the, if you can put the revenue slide up. Thank you. So everything you see here is a snapshot as of December 31st. Revenues are shown in the functional level you're familiar with, how we adopt the budget. And then the columns across, you'll see the original adopted budget's amounts, then the amended budget as it stood at December 31st, the actuals we had received at that point in time, and then that last column there, the year-end projected actual. So items to note, ad valorem revenues, as you would expect at the end of December. That's the bulk of what we've received so far, about 75% of our budget. Another item of interest, if you look at the restricted intergovernmental line, you'll see it looks like we're going to be way short of revenue, like over $10 million. That's kind of an anomaly this year because when we budgeted in human services child care subsidy revenues, we didn't really know when NC Fast was going to go live with paying child care providers directly, so we have that in the budget, but they have now taken it over, so you'll see we're going to be short about $9.3 million of revenue, but it's 100% tied to expenditures, so we're also going to save the same amount on the expenditure side, so you'll see that. So here's the expenditures, and as we did with revenues, it's got the functional budgets, same thing across, and if you look at the human services line, just like we talked about, projected to be way under because we're not going to have that expense. I will say that it's very unusual after 6 months of budget activity, the amended budget is actually lower than the adopted budget, and I think that was due to the board action of reducing the economic development incentive budget earlier this year. So just to kind of summarize those two things together, you can see there the original budget was which is also the adopted budget, $330.7 million in expenditures, $315.3 million in revenue. So that left us a gap to fill with fund balance of $15.3 million. So that has dropped some with the amended budget, again with the economic development incentive reduction, 14.2. Then in the bottom, if you look at the projected year end as it stands as of December 31st, we're anticipating $307.1 million in expenditures, a little less than that, 306.8 in revenue. So at this point, we're expecting to spend about $251,000 of fund balance. But it is so very, very early, and you'd expect this to change. You know, we could run it probably every week and have a different number because there's so many variables. Did want to point out you might want to see a different view, so if you're interested in seeing it from a departmental level, there's an appendix in the financial report that gives you this view that you're kind of used to seeing in the budget process. So if you look in the gray area, it shows you the budgeted expenditures, revenues, and net county costs. And then over in the blue shows you what we're projecting for the actual. So shows you a little more granular detail on how we got to that number. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. Appreciate the opportunity to provide that update. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Diane and Tim, very much. Obviously, a lot of data here, so thank you for providing that. I would also just share for folks who might be really interested in this, the County Commission is holding a series of budget work sessions. We had one last Tuesday where, you know, we're spending a lot of time delving into all of this data in a lot more detail. So if that's something you're interested in, feel free to attend our upcoming budget work sessions that we'll be having monthly. And maybe could you just comment a little bit more about where people, in addition to the information that's on the county website for this agenda item, where else can folks get more information on the county's financial status and, you know, where we are in the year and things like that?
Sure. So I think Tim mentioned this quarterly report is new. We'll have that out there multiple places, the finance website. If you go to the main site, budget, there's a transparency link from the main page. It'll be there as well. And then we both, if somebody wants to see like popular annual financial reports, which are kind of a more condensed version of our big CAFR financial report, they can find that on the website under finance. And budget kind of has, sister documents of budget in brief in addition to a large budget document. And then I think we have the work session scheduled is on the commissioner's page. So if anybody's interested in attending those, that gives the agenda for what's upcoming.
Great. Thank you. All right. If there's no other comments, then
I've
go ahead.
got a couple. So I'm just thinking about, we just had our work session, right? And we were looking at all this information. And so when is the next work session on the budget?
March, we have Greg Israel will be reporting on fleet replacement and the AV Tech capital plan, and then we have the county capital plan in April, and I think.
So March 13th is our next.
It's March 13th.
Okay, that's the same day we're doing the joint meeting with the Asheville City Council later that
It's
day?
the 20th, I'm sorry.
Okay.
You changed it because of the joint meeting.
Oh,
The
okay.
March one is the 20th, and it deals with capital, AB Tech. You've one in April that deals with development and some of what's driving development, also maps infrastructure in the community, everything from public utilities to water to roads, and how that's going to help inform you as you make decisions about development. And then you have one in May with the 2 school systems in AB Tech focused on education.
Okay, so this is a lot of information, and there are some people in the public that would want to just dig in and read it all. I would like to suggest that as you give these reports, we spend a little bit more time on them in here, and that there's a little bit more in-depth explanation. And because it's very good information, I think that people, I mean, you can pick some of the slides and go more in depth on those. And the other thing is that we have discussed in our work sessions the fund balance. That's one of the things that we've discussed. So, I would like to see us, when you come back and talk to us, I would like to hear, okay, well, here's some thoughts on the fund balance. Here's what we could do. Here's how it would look. And we've also had discussion, around the tax rate, and how that would look. And so, if we're either going to be able to discuss it in here, and I don't want us doing it in the last, budget session, that we need to have provide that information and discussion, not only for us, but for the public as well. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? So, I mean, it's good information, and y'all do a really good job explaining it. I just think
and I will say, from the last work session that we did, we had that discussion on the fund balance stuff and some of the budget questions that you all are brought up. And we, as a staff, we are addressing the questions that you had from that work session.
Sure.
And so so we do plan to come back to you with some of those suggestions, and absolutely willing to do a deeper dive on this information in the future, and sort of walking you through some of the you and the public on some of this information. And in particular, fund balance, I sort of felt like we had talked at length at the budget work session, so I didn't want to sort of go back over that and sort of rehash it. Although I will say, as a result of that discussion, which was very helpful last week, we did actually, on page 8 of the financial report, some of the things that we did hear you say, which is you didn't want to see just percentages, so you will actually see dollar figures and per capita cost of that available fund balance. So I would like to sort of point that out specifically as one of the things that we have addressed in this, and we'll continue to get you more information on those topics.
I want to reiterate what Commissioner Belcher said. A lot of folks aren't able to come to our work sessions. They don't have that availability. And the talk about the fund balance is extremely important. And, if we can highlight that in here, because it really does affect our citizens.
Sure, absolutely. And one of the things that we are hoping to do with this this quarterly report, so different times of the year really needs to focus on sort of different issues. Sort of this is mid-year, and probably the next quarter we really need to look at sort of the budget projection type stuff. And I'm sort of hoping on sort of those off quarters, like the first quarter of a year, that we will actually get to dive into some deeper topics, such as our sort of liabilities that we have, those the other post-employment benefits and some of the pension liabilities and those kinds of topics, and sort of the off quarters where we've just started a new budget year, coming to you the first quarter of a new budget year. There's really not much information we can give you as far as budget projections, but we would like to start doing deeper dives in this chamber, really to sort of give you and the public sort of more information on how we operate financially.
One thing I'd like to bring up is we talked about since 1 year of how many of these work sessions we've had in the last year, from the budget to all the other things that a lot of the people don't know what we've done. And Chairman, I don't know if you could answer that, or if the county manager, what we've done in the last year compared to what was done over the years.
I'll take a first stab at it. So, I think, we're making a lot more utilization of work sessions as a board. So we are now having, basically, most months we have a work session in addition to the 2 regular county commissioner meetings. And those meetings meet down on the first floor of this building, and they are open to the public, just like all of our regular meetings. At the end of this meeting, I'll remind everyone that we do have this joint meeting with the city council at our regular work session time on the 13th, but these are regular public meetings. So they are open to the public. We don't take public comment in the meetings, partly because we don't vote on any matters in those meetings. This is sort of for information and taking a deeper dive in issues than we're going to typically have time for during a regular busy county commission agenda meeting. So I think they've been great to just provide the space to go into a lot more detail and a lot more depth on financial and budget issues, as well as other issues like some of the criminal justice issues that we were talking about in the previous session. So I've really appreciated the commission taking the additional time to really spend on those issues.
Yeah, and I think one thing you said is we've almost done it every month. Mm-hmm. We have done it every month.
Right. 300 hours.
So
not
every
clear
month.
that. Nobody's counting, but I think it's 300 hours.
This is when you should tell the chair you voted for another one today informally to add.
Oh gosh, we did, didn't we?
Well, that's right.
And I'll say they've been great. The staff have done a great job preparing them to make them highly informative. And I do appreciate the concern that not all citizens can they usually go from about noon until 3 or 4 in the afternoon. Not everyone can take a day to do that. But they are highly informative, and we are doing what we can to put that information up on the county's websites and other locations for folks who can't come to the meetings to be able to access the info as well.
Yeah, and my point is that we're going to have the work sessions, and we're going to have the financial work sessions, and I thank Commissioner Frost for, agreeing with what I was discussing as far as the fund balance. If we're going to discuss those things, then we need to look at ways of taking that discussion into the boardroom, so that people will be able to see it and hear it, and so we can hash those things out as far as the dollars, and before we get to the last budget report, which is the way it's been done in the past. And so I'll commend the board for starting this early and having a lot of discussion, and so I just want to make sure that we get into the meat of some of these discussions into the boardroom before we get into those last meetings. So.
I had a question, I think for y'all, perhaps for other county staff. If you could just help me understand a bit more. On page 3 of the report, under expenditures, looking at the public safety, economic and physical development, and human services lines, the original and amended budgets are quite a bit higher than the year-end projected actual at this point.
Page 3?
It's showing it for me as page 3 of the document that was in our agenda.
Yes.
Yeah. Can you just sort of walk us through, I just want to make sure I'm understanding why we're seeing at this point, why we're seeing the year-end projected actual. In the instance of human services, it's $12 million less, or $13 million less than the amended budget amount, just so we can sort of understand and track along with that.
I mean, I think the 9.3 million of that is what we talked about the NC-FAST taking over the payments. The remainder is, Mr. Holland might be able to speak better to it, but I think it's just historical, based on historical trends and savings in the salary and wage expenses through December 31st. So if they've had vacancies or things like that, then that adds to savings. And I know they have a lot of variables in that budget, so we work closely with them on that.
So going to the issue of that we do forecast in the budget using a lot of fund balance, but the traditional outcome is that we, in fact, don't use it, and we find ways to, to not use the fund balance, and that's kind of consistent with, the forecast here is consistent with that sort of expectation.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thanks, that's very helpful.
And the detail, if that Appendix B, if you
Appendix
wanted to
B will
see
do the
like the
breakdown.
details within a function, that would give you more information per department.
Okay.
Like in public safety, it would show you specifically. I know
can do the
like
breakdown.
detention's had a lot of vacancies, trouble recruiting, so I think they've had some significant salary savings there.
Okay. Thank you, I really
And
appreciate
we're
it.
happy to give you more detail.
The one other thing I'd throw out as well, and I think we talked about this some in the work sessions or in some previous meetings, but just in terms of the budget process, this budget report is kind of turning into a budget discussion, which is probably the right thing that should happen. But, the one other thing I would say too, just in terms of process for this year, when we do get further into the budget process and the county manager produces a proposed budget, which will be a draft budget, and then we'll approve it later. I would like, and that's both for as a commissioner and for the public, I would really like to request that that the county manager's budget is produced as like a hard copy version that commissioners will receive and the public can receive. This data is all great, and it's great to have it in an accessible format electronically, but I think that there's just enough complexity to the budget that there is a lot of value when the budget comes out to just receive an actual physical document that we can have, that you can go through and highlight and make notes on. And, just for that process, I think that'll be useful. It's not the way we've done it in the past, and I like to not print out hard copies of things whenever we can, but this is just such an important part of what the county does. I think that would be useful to the process.
I think we've been asking for that for a long time. I think this year we might finally get it.
All right, any other questions or comments from the board? All right, Diane, Tim, thanks. All right.
No.
All right, the next item on our agenda is the resolution approving the 2018 limited obligation bonds, and Mike Frew will present this item.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. First, let me make sure everyone understands that I'm not a bond nerd, so if we hit anything that's too technical, I'll try to lean on Tim. But we had the public hearing for this matter a couple weeks ago.
Our bond nerd.
No, they're restricted in this case to our outside consultants, Davenport, and to attorneys at Parker and Poe, who are doing the heavy lifting on those bond topics. But for our purposes today, this is the follow-up to approve the resolution. We had the public hearing 2 weeks ago for the $65 million, and this is all toward core functions of the county. School-related issues. It's limited obligation bonds as opposed to general obligation bonds. Here, you can think of it more like a mortgage, because what the county's doing is selling bonds to achieve revenue stream to pay for renovations, not just to Asheville High School and Montford North Star Academy and to IRB Jones, but it's also to county school projects, including a major upfit to community high school out in Swannanoa. So what this would do is authorizing a amendment to the 2015 bonds and a notice of continuance. But I want to make clear that that's really what the bond, it's a packaging tool to call it that it's an amendment, even though right here it's strictly related to the $65 million for the stated projects. Now, there's a couple dozen projects involved, and the laundry list, some small, some large, but here the main work is the visible work we all know driving down McDowell Avenue at Asheville High, and again, IRB Jones, Montford North Star, and Community. So we're asking the board to approve this resolution, and that would allow for collateralization against Asheville High School and Montford North Star for a 20-year term for that $65 million. And this is Article 39 sales tax money dedicated, and the board is not pledging the full faith and credit of taxes. It's from that dedicated revenue source.
All right, thank you. Any questions from the board at this time? We will have public comment on this, but are there any questions? These are all for projects that we have already approved. So this is just issuing the financing from the sales tax revenue for those purposes. So we're not approving any new projects. It's just the financing for those existing approved projects.
And these projects have begun.
All right. All right, we will see if is there anyone who has, any members of the public who have a comment on this item? All right, Mr. Rice?
You try it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I want to know what the North Star on Montford. Old Randolph School. The concern that I have, and I went to the city board and listened at them, this stuff went into existence through the school board. It never has been talked about here in public that I'm aware of, far as that building. Now, far as the capital money to support it, yes, but the discussion on it, I don't remember it. Because I certainly myself would have been opposed to it, because that's a lot of cost in a building to house kids that they're wanting to house. And on this general obligation money here, I understand the funding of it. The funding is no problem. I see this coming and going. It's just a way to refine it. But the program itself and the needs of what that is, I'd like to have heard about the discussion here at this commission before you vote on a building like that. So don't look like Ken's heard of it either.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? All right, we'll bring it back to the board. I just would comment on this. We do, these projects all came recommended from the School Capital Fund Commission, which the Asheville City School Board, the Buncombe County School Board, Pat Bryant from the County School Board represents the County School Board on that process. So I think these projects have all been vetted by both the County School Board internally and then the City School Board and then the School Capital Fund Commission. And again, they've all been previously, they have come to the County Commission and they've been voted on here too. So I think there's been a good, very thorough process from staff, the school boards, and this body to rank all the projects within each school system. And these were projects that rose to the top. I'm sorry, was there a question?
Yeah, the other thing I was going to say is that these did come to us, and we did have a fact sheet on each one of them in our agenda that where we as commissioners had an opportunity to review those and then comment here in the chamber.
Dr. Baldwin actually presented on that model in the city schools budget request last year. So I'm happy to send those to Mr. Rice, that presentation.
Yeah, I think that's probably good.
All right, any other questions or comments from the commission? All right, we need a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Couldn't get my mic.
All right. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you. All right, and next up, related, School Capital Fund Commission Project Ordinance, and Dustin Clark will present this item.
Hello, I'm Dustin Clark from the Buncombe County Finance Department. I'm here to convey some information from the School Capital Fund Commission. So kind of following on to the topic that we just had a motion on, I've got a few slides here to walk you through, just a few. So I'll talk briefly on the commission, give you an update on what's been happening there, review some of the latest requests that have been made, and then present a recommendation from the School Capital Fund Commission. So just to recap, School Capital Fund Commission works in a cycle outlined on the screen right now. So step one is to determine the capacity for funding projects. That's the Article 39 sales tax revenue that is received by the county and dedicated for these types of projects. The commission looks at those revenues and then determines what capacity is suitable for funding, with the goal of making this fund self-sustaining so that this operates kind of aside from the general fund. Then the commission works with schools to prioritize their needs using criteria around safety and cost efficiency, and the schools have been heavily involved in that process. And then lastly, they create a recommendation for funding, and that's what I'm here today to talk a little bit about. So briefly, just a couple items. The last time the commission met, there was a tentative plan adopted or informally adopted to plan out when this commission would bring recommendations to the board. There's been a lot of activity happening over the last couple of years as this commission kind of spun up as a newly reformed commission. So the plan you see on screen is what the plan is so far. So there's an initial cycle that is happening now, and so we're here a little early, but the deadline would be to present an original recommendation by April to you, and then another one tentatively planned for October. However, the commission is is really operating on the needs of the school system. So if there are additional needs, they would meet in order to meet those needs and address them whenever that's necessary. But on screen now, there's an outlook for funding. So to recap, the 3 bars on the left in the shaded area represent what's happened so far. So in 2017, there was a rather large award, $44.4 million awarded and funded to the schools, and that's part of the LOBS issuance that we just heard about. 2018, another $14.7 million was awarded, and then for school year 2019, a $14.23 awarded to date, and that's when we transition into the estimated capacity view. And so that's represented by the dashed lines, and that's based on the revenues that we receive in. That's our projection for how much capacity this fund will be awarding to projects moving forward. We're trying to be very conservative with those estimates, and those estimates are subject to change based on revenue changes and interest rate changes. So for school year 2019, you'll notice there's a little bit of a gap between what's been awarded so far, that 14.23, and the shaded area above it at 15 million. And that gap is why we're here today. The commission was recommending a few more projects to use up the remaining capacity for that school year, and then we would anticipate that would be the remainder of school year 19 funding, and we would be looking at school year 2020 funding moving forward. So to talk about the recommendation, fairly simple. Once again, we only had just a little bit of capacity left for 2019 school year. So 3 projects there. One for the Asheville High School. The old ROTC building is not in good shape. That's actually not suitable for occupation at the moment. And so that building has been cordoned off. Folks are not allowed in there, but they would like to proceed with demolition of that building and stabilization of the wall. And it's actually more cost efficient to do that now because there are crews on site doing the other Asheville High work. The cost for that project is estimated to be $431,000. For the Buncombe County school system, the Irwin High School, there's a school nutrition kitchen replacement. This includes some design services as well as investigating and cost estimating the full cost of that project. However, timing is very sensitive here, is what we heard from the school system, so they need to get equipment on order and they need that funding as soon as they can in order to save costs on the equipment side. So the cost there is $132,000. And lastly, the Commission has already awarded some funding for an LED lighting replacement project across both school districts. However, Duke has cut their rebate for those fixtures, and so that produced a little bit of a cost overrun. The school system has, the county school system has supplemented those cost overruns with additional funding sources from lottery and Article 4042 monies. But the remainder of that supplement is about $250,000, and so that was a request made to the School Capital Fund Commission, and you're seeing that there. So the total for all 3 requests is $813,167. And I would just pause if there are any questions at this point on any of these projects. We do have a few members of that commission in the room as well.
Yeah, I've got a question. So I don't, we approved $800,000. Leave the slide up, please. We approved $800,000, I think, for LED light replacement. Is that correct? I think
Yes.
that's right.
So yes.
So it's going to be.
I actually think it was I think it was actually.
It was a lot more.
It
was
a larger
actually
number
more.
for the. I mean, it's lighting replacement for like 30 schools countywide. So I don't remember the exact number, but it was a big number.
Part of, so it's my understanding, part of the problem the county schools had. There was a limited number of time, a finite amount of time to get the bulbs installed. And it was my understanding they just didn't have the manpower to install them all within a certain amount of time, and so the rebates would,
That's right. I mean, it's like they're doing lighting retrofits across all the, basically every county school in Buncombe County, and making great progress on it. But it is like a 2.5-year project from start to finish, or somewhere in that neighborhood. And so Duke, is providing a rebate that contributes to it, but they have adjusted downward the rebate. So that's the reason for the gap.
I thought in this project that basically half of it was supposedly lottery money that was paying for half of it, and Duke was going to pay for the other half. Now it's flipped into where Duke's backing out on it or something.
Yeah, I mean, I get it.
I don't think they're
backing out. They're just, they provide incentives for various kinds of energy efficiency things, and they do adjust those incentives periodically. And this is,
So we missed the deadline, basically. Right?
Yeah, because
our fault.
the schools didn't have enough manpower to switch out all the lights, and as Brownie said, it was a Herculean task, the amount of light bulbs that had to be changed, and I don't think they backed out. There was always a deadline in place, and we just couldn't meet it.
Okay, so I mean, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on it. It's just I wanted the information. It's a little bit disappointing, but I understand that there are deadlines on rebates, and based on the information you said, it's. I mean, if we're going to have to look at this across the board. Does this take care of all the schools, or is this like are we half or?
As far as I know, this would complete the project across all schools.
Okay. All right. Well, that's good. Okay.
Is that right? For sure.
Isn't that right, Tim?
Yeah, Tim Fairley's here. Tim Fairley's here.
This will complete the if we approve this funding with the other funding sources, the LED project is expected to be completed.
Right.
Right. The city schools are doing their own project as well.
Yep.
Buncombe County Schools is still using other funding sources to continue the project.
So it's not completing the installation of LED lighting in all of the schools. What I'm asking is, where are we in that process? I mean, are we halfway there? Are we 3/4?
I think this will cover the rest of it.
That's not what I'm hearing.
Tim, why don't you come up to the mic, please?
That's what you got. We're half. Okay. He's saying they're going to.
Yeah, they're providing the rest of the funds.
We are using in-house forces to do the replacements, and that involves a light fixture like that. Basically, just the can remains and the guts get changed out, and the lamps as well. They're LED, but the whole guts are changed out, and we have 2 crews working on that, dedicated to it. We're about half done.
Okay.
But it's going to take more than a year to complete the rest of it, and we're just working our way through.
Are there any more deadlines that rebates may run out?
Well, next January could be a new adjustment to that rebate, but we'll have all the funding in place, and we'll have bought the fixtures. You can't just go out and buy all the fixtures. You have a limited time between when they'll rebate you, and when you purchase them, and when they'll rebate. So they've kind of got to work together.
Right.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, but I think what Commissioner Frost, Duke Power, have they got any more, or are we going to miss the deadline again on this?
Well, they changed basically it's a rebate on the amount that we get when we purchase the fixtures, and they reduced that from $50 to $37. It could be next year, next January, that they reduce it again, but our intention is to have all our purchases made.
Right.
They will not, they're just looking at the light fixture itself.
Not installed.
Not the installation of it.
Right.
Good.
It needs to be installed in order to get the rebate, but they're giving you a rebate on the purchase of the fixture. Does that make sense?
Thanks, Tim. Any other questions about other projects?
No.
Okay. Dustin?
Yeah, so that makes up the recommendation. So at this point, I think you have an ordinance in front of you. So there would be a request for approval of that project's ordinance based upon this recommendation.
All right, thank you. Yeah, so we are going to vote on this, so we will take public, public comment on this. Are there any members of the public who would like to comment? Mr. Yeldon.
I can get complex when it comes to sewer and water, but when it comes to LEDs, I can't. And I've heard, well, maybe, I don't know, I'm not sure, I've also replaced them at the house in my bathroom, and I had to pay $45 for a light that could never be replaced, because when it goes dead, guess what you do? Buy a new one. So I'd like to know, number one, are these LED lights they're putting in the schools, are they a fixture, or are they the light itself that is part of the fixture? And when it goes bad, does it have to be totally removed and replaced? I'd like to know that question. And a very simple question. Of the $800 and some thousand, I've heard we're getting funding from here, funding from here, and funding from here. We know the lottery money's there, we know the rebate's there. We also know they have construction money on that tax. How much of that $800,000 is coming from me, the taxpayer? I'd like to know that. That's very simple, folks. You make something simple so complex, we're sitting back here scratching our heads saying, what the heck is going on here? So I'd like to have those questions answered.
All right, I don't see anyone else. Hey, Tim Fearley, if you wouldn't mind coming back up to just talk through a little bit more what kind of lighting systems these are, what the taxpayers are getting for this. And I would just add, I think the taxpayers are paying for 100% of this. There's not any other. There are some different revenue sources, lottery funds, these sales tax funds, but it's all taxpayer money. So these are our public schools, and it's all coming from we, the taxpayers. But talk about the lighting systems that are being installed.
Well, their fixtures not unsimilar to this. They're 2 foot by 4 foot typically, but they look very similar to this. They have a very long lifespan. So the School Capital Fund Commission was presented by our maintenance director and our energy manager a pretty intense analysis of the savings that these fixtures would result in. And so those are our operating savings, electricity every year. Also maintenance savings. You don't really change bulbs. We're constantly changing lamps, which are difficult to dispose of, the fluorescent lamps. It's a big cost in operating and actually purchasing the lamps themselves. But these fixtures have a very excellent warranty. They're expected to last a very long time, and we will not have to replace the guts of it in 20 years when the expected lifespan of these. There's basically a transformer, it's called a controller, an LED, that can go bad and would be replaced, but I think when you factor in the maintenance and the operating costs of the light fixtures, there's a huge savings that if at energy costs today, looking over 20 years at what energy is going to go up in costs over time, so we're gonna beat that.
Great, thanks so much. And just to put an exclamation point on that, I mean, we did talk about this when the project first came to us. I believe that from the maintenance cost and the actual electricity cost, the LED lighting program is going to save taxpayers in Buncombe County $1 million a year. So it's probably one of the best clean energy projects, but also it's probably one of the best taxpayer projects we've ever had come in front of us.
And I do think, I think our participation, it may have been more, but I think our participation was just $800,000, and we saved $1 million. Pretty sure it was.
Okay. It's been a while since we looked at that. So. All right. Any other questions or comments from the board? we need a motion to approve this item.
Move to approve.
Second.
Further discussion, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Thank you, everyone, for your work on this one. Thank you, Dustin. All right, the next item is the board appointments. So let's just take them in the order that they appear on our sheet. So the first is the Asheville Board of Adjustments, and the county has one appointment to this board. There are two applicants, one of whom was not able to attend today. Did we ever get any information about the reason the person who was scheduled was not able to come today? But you did, she did confirm she was going to be able to come, but then was not able to be here today, and we're not sure why. Okay. Well, I've heard some commissioners who would like to try to schedule a time to talk to that candidate, since we only have two candidates for this. You know, this is one of the most important boards. I would lean in that direction. What's the pleasure of the other board members?
I'd like to talk to her.
Do we not know why the person wasn't here? Because we extended this the last time. Some were prepared to vote for this the last time, and we said, okay, we're going to interview. And then we extended the interview. If we don't,
this was the first time we were going to interview these two applicants.
it was.
Yeah.
You're right. I do think that, last time, some people were prepared to vote, but we extended the interview to make sure that we were able to talk to, I think particularly to make sure that we were able to talk to both of them, but I'm just curious, if it was an emergency, or,
I think if we can, I'd really like to, find out and talk to her.
Did she contact anybody on the board or anything?
I don't know.
I just assume vote, but.
Take a vote and
if they contacted.
nominate Bill Newman.
I think we
All right. Why don't we just?
We gotta deal with the suggestion here first.
Yeah.
Could I just see could you just raise your hand if you prefer to hold off until we can do an interview? And if there's a majority that wants to hold off, we'll do that. If there's not, we're going to vote. All right, who would like to hold off? All right, looks like there's 4 who want to hold off till we can see if Autumn is still wanting to do this.
Yeah.
And if she is, let's try to interview her.
Okay.
I just hate if someone's, there's a lot of flu and stuff going
flu,
around. If someone
yeah.
got knocked out,
So
I don't want to exclude a good candidate for that reason.
So I don't think it's unreasonable to, we need to know that pretty quick, because this is an important board position. I don't think it's unreasonable. We need to have some communication back, and, the interview needs to be scheduled,
For the next
before.
meeting.
It needs to be done, and if they're not there that time, we need to vote.
I think we're in agreement. Yeah.
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
All right, let's move on to the next one, which is the other Board of Adjustments. So we've got a bunch of great applicants, and there's only two vacancies on this. So I think probably the best way to do this is we'll just start from one side, and what I'd like to ask each commissioner to do is to identify the two candidates that you support, and the candidates who get the most votes will be appointed. So let me start on Start with Commissioner Fryer. Start on this side, and please, and go slowly so we can make sure we get everything listed, and name your top 2.
Clay Mooney, Wendell Howard.
Down to 2, Wendell Howard, Clay Mooney.
Martin Moore and Carter Webb.
Carter Webb, Martin Moore.
Clay Mooney and Wendell Howard.
Wendell Howard and Martin Moore.
Carter Webb and Martin Moore.
So it's going to be Wendell.
All right, so it's Howard and Moore.
Wendell Howard.
Is that right? All right. All right, thanks, everyone. And thanks, everyone, for applying for this and for this board. All right. Okay. Congratulations. All right, the Economic Development Coalition, we have 3 reappointments and 1 vacancy, and we've got,
You got 4.
and we've got four folks interested, 3 of whom are reappointments.
So I'll make a motion for Matthew Burrell, Brad Galbraith, Janice Brunman, and Jim Oliver.
Or is there a second? Second. All right. Further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Board of Equalization and Review, 5 reappointments.
I'll nominate Mark Morris, Jim Edmonds, Debbie Lane, Miriam McKinney, Michael, pronounce your last name, Zanuck.
I second.
All right. Further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. We now have public comment. Let me just go over our policies for that. The time limit for individual comment to the board is 3 minutes. If your time expires, you can leave any question along with your name, address, and phone number with the county manager. Board members are not expected to comment on any matters during the public comment. This is the public's time to speak to the commission. The board reserves the right to deny public address on subjects that have already previously been presented and had public comment during the board meeting this evening. Are there any members of the public who would like to comment? Start over here. And please share your name and where you live.
My name is Beth Jessic. I live in Asheville, North Carolina. Good evening, Chair Newman and Commissioners. My apologies, I was unavoidably detained and I was not able to comment earlier on Representative McGrady's presentation. Am I able to do so at this time? It's very short.
Since you did not speak on it earlier, yes, you are.
Alrighty, thank you. In late 2013, then Representative Tim Moffitt and Representative Chuck McGrady wrote a law to take control of Asheville's water. The law eventually passed the House and Senate. After several lawsuits in late 2016, the North Carolina Supreme Court ruled in favor of Asheville, saying that the taking of Asheville's water was unconstitutional. I'd like to quote from a December 21st, 2016 Citizen Times article announcing the decision of the North Carolina Supreme Court judges. A member of the GOP majority General Assembly, Representative Chuck McGrady, meanwhile said the court decision may not be the final word and there may be other ways to loosen the city's control. As I've said in the past, there are more than one way to skin a cat. Representative McGrady is relentless in his efforts to take control of Asheville's water. For the past 7 years, he has been using his legislative authority in the North Carolina House to take our water. When he says he is trying to work with Asheville to resolve water issues, please realize that there are no issues to be resolved. The courts resolved the Asheville water issues over a year ago. Representative McGrady's efforts appear to be conciliatory and cooperative. His actions in the legislature are antagonistic and punitive, making it difficult to believe he has altruistic motives and is acting with integrity. Please consider this should the county enter into discussions with him. For supporting materials about Representative McGrady's unrelenting fight for Asheville's water, please visit a website called Save Our Water Western North WNC, saveourwaterwnc.com. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Would you like a copy of this? Shall I leave this with anyone?
Your
No?
choice. You can leave it with the clerk if you'd like.
Thank you.
Sure, thank you. All right. Senator Van Dyne.
Thank you very much. I am inspired to speak this evening because of the presentation about the Justice Resource Center. And I am so proud to represent a district that has treatment courts, Family Justice Court, the Family Justice Center, and the Justice Resource Center. And so the reason I am here tonight is to ask you, because I believe that these initiatives of yours may be under attack by the General Assembly through the redistricting of the courts that they are attempting. If you look at the Buncombe County District 28 Judicial District, there is no reason to subdivide it. There are at least 4 similar districts that are bigger than Buncombe County, and there are 4 districts, those same 4 districts have more district court judges than we do. Yet they are kept whole while we are divided. If you look at the district court districts that they are dividing, they just happen to coincide with the, very frequently anyway, with those districts that are represented by Democrats in the Senate. So what I am suggesting is that the reason for breaking our 28th judicial district into 2 or 3 districts for election purposes is simply to change the partisan makeup of our courts. And I have reason to believe at the district level that the reason they want to do that is because they are opposed to some of the progressive initiatives that we talked about this evening. As evidence of that, I can suggest the legislation that was in the budget that made it more difficult for other judicial districts to reduce fines for indigent defendants, and a bill that was brought this year that would have standardized the approach toward treatment courts. When I asked the sponsor of that bill if she would consider some legislation, an amendment to that would hold our treatment courts harmless, I was told that was inconsistent with the intent of the bill. So I commend to you the resolution that I emailed you earlier this week and ask you to consider a resolution asking the state legislature not to change the way Buncombe County elects its judges. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for sending that information in the resolution. All right, who's the next? Terry?
Chairman, Commissioners, I'm Terry Wells. I'm a community member in Sandy Mush, and I'm here to thank you this evening. We really appreciate the support you have given us financially over the past year, and part of that went to our high-speed internet. And there's many ways that that's having an impact on our community, but I want to share one way that really excites me and I feel like you will really care about as well. That has allowed, there were some community members that came to me recently and they said, now that we have this high-speed internet in the community, will you work with us and reach out to AB Tech and try to get the high school equivalency program to where we can do online classes here and have that support so that we can get our GED. And that class is already full. I've already worked with AB Tech. We have our orientation March 7th, and we'll be starting that program. And this has the potential to be life-changing for community members because we all know that without a high school diploma, your opportunities are pretty limited. So I just want to thank you so much for that support and what it means to our community.
Oh.
And sorry.
It's okay.
And I also want to say our Sandy Mush 4-H was here earlier, and 40 years ago, I was in that 4-H club when it was started in Sandy Mush. And I like to think that part of my community service and caring so much comes from being active in that. and we're really excited about the opportunity. They've come to us and they really want to be back in the community center, and it doesn't really work well for them in the big gym, as you can imagine, with that many kids and everything. So they want a space of their own. They want a space that they can call their own home and have up all their awards and have their activities ongoing. And our Sandy Mush Community Center is very supportive of that, and that means that we have to be able to do work on our third floor to regain that. And so I just hope that you will take that into consideration and continue your support of us. And we so much appreciate what you've done for us already, and we just really want to continue to partner with you. And we appreciate you, and thank you very much.
All right, thanks, Terry. Mr. Rice.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Okay, y'all have got good emails from me this week and give you kudos. You ought to smile about that. I mean, good Lord, get a pat on the back from me. You better deserve it, you know? Now, a news release just yesterday got to my hands about Mrs. Green and what oh Lord, how they condemned her to death, you know, about her role here. Let me tell you, Mrs. Green might have done some bad things, but this Board of Commissioners and the one that's responsible didn't do your job to begin with, and you're not doing a really good job on some of this stuff right now. Now, you can attack Mrs. Green, but they need some house cleaning here. You didn't go far enough in your reorganization. You need to get rid of the attorneys that was on board at that time. I'm talking about the ones that we got right now. Get rid of them. And you need to start with the top management and get rid of that. You got me? If you don't clean the sewer line out, you're not going nowhere with the sewer. Now, if that's hard to take, live with it. Under Mrs. Green, I was able to get public information. Mr. Yelton sued Mrs. Green in court because of a gatekeeper issue. He's sitting back there, he can attest to it. We've got an attorney over here that is being a gatekeeper and blocking public information, and Yuns are providing right now, while we're talking, the resources for him to do it. He is blocking it. Everything is going through your attorney. That is wrong. If I got public information under Mrs. Green, it must have been pretty good. Now, when you talk about your staff and what a role they played and how intimidated they was by Mrs. Green and the power that she had, you got the same process in place right now with different people. It might not be the manager, but the attorney and the HR person. When you build a corner stall down there for the HR person, and she's in every meeting, how intimidating is it for the HR people to show up everywhere? You need to think about what you're doing. And if you don't like it, that's okay. Live with it. Because there's bigger things ahead if you don't deal with this. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Yelton?
I don't introduce myself, most people either. I tell everybody in Buncombe County, go ahead and ask people about me. You either like me or you hate me. And I'm so proud of that because I don't straddle the fence. You know exactly how I feel, and I say what I think. To your face. That's the best part. Chairman Newman, I know that tax dollars pay everything in this building. They pay the salaries of the police. They pay your salaries. They pay everything. My question that I did not get asked was what percent of that $800,000 is coming from this county directly to the schools for that project? I still want that question, and I'm glad this is recorded in public because that's what the problem is. There's nothing wrong with having differences. Al and I don't agree on everything, but we talk. Mike and I don't agree on a lot of things, do we, Mike? But we still talk. I'll talk with you if I don't agree with you. By the way, you got any books in your office yet, Brownie, to make it look good in there? See, you got to have a little humor in this, because if you took this thing seriously, you'd go crazy. Because Jerry's right. When I read that public announcement from the Association of County Commissioners, I wanted to puke. They didn't mention a thing about the Director of Human and Health Services in Wake County that was arrested. They didn't mention a thing about all the people in the county that have been arrested for embezzlement of money. I think there's somebody who was associated with the Board of Elections one place was embezzling money. They didn't mention a thing about that. You know who's responsible for anything that goes on wrong? You ran for the job, you got the job, and it's you. And if you go out there in that hall and walk down that hall and look at the right on the pictures, that's the people that let things in Buncombe County get the way they are. Now, you got a good start. And frankly, I look Mandy straight in the eye. I've known Mandy a long time. I know a couple of her brothers from Black Mountain that I used to meet of a morning, and I guarantee she's going to smile when I say that, because we both know the brother I'm talking about. You all are headed in the right place. But when you vote 7-0 up there on who's going to be appointed for a board, you know what I think, my little pea brain? They've been talking about who they're going to vote for before they got in this room. You don't have a 7-0 vote that you've done that. And by the way, since the yellow light goes off just a minute, I might take a few extra minutes. I'm not a senator, and I appreciate the senator being here. But I noticed when the yellow light went off, the red light didn't come on when she was talking. In other words, do we have two sets of rules for the elected and the guy that's paying the bill? I think we do. I want my question answered.
Thank you, Chairman and Commissioners. My name is Tom Van Slambrock. I wanted to speak to you tonight about a very hot topic of taxation, specifically property tax. It is apparent that the amount of tax dollars that we have in the accounts here for Buncombe County, we are overtaxed, okay? Yet in the new budget, we will be facing additional tax increases. But Commissioner Belcher had proposed a 1 penny deduction due to the money that was wrongly paid out through the bonuses. I proposed a tax reduction due to the excessive amount of money that we have in the rainy day funds. It is evident that we are paying enough to start giving pay raises to the taxpayers in the form of tax cuts. We as a county still need to be looking for ways to cut spending, but I also think that we need to stimulate our local economy, and I think that we can do that by reducing our property tax. It's also going to benefit the small businesses. Commissioner Presley has a small business. I'm sure he would appreciate that, and anybody else that has a small business here in Buncombe County would appreciate anything that's going to help. Property taxes has gone up. We've seen a lot of people hurt, moving away, and can't afford to even live here in Buncombe County, and it's going to continue unless we address these things. And that was one thing, as most of you all know, I was running for county commissioner, and that's part of my platform, that we need to look out for our local folks, people sitting out here, the ones that own property and the ones that are spending a lot of money. I think we need to focus on that. You guys can do what's right. You have an opportunity, and I agree with Commissioner Belcher that we do need to do something. I just don't think the proposal is enough. We can go way farther than that, so thank you.
Okay, anybody else? All right.
Can I comment on Ms. Terry's discussion about, can I have a point of personal privilege? Sure.
You know, the only thing I would say, they're very moving comments, but I am cognizant of our policies about not commenting. I mean, people will sometimes say things that are constructively critical. Sometimes they'll say really nice things to us. And I want us to try to kind of stay in the habit of listening, and I know it's very tempting to respond. So that's my personal view on this time of the meeting.
I can handle what I was planning on doing in another way. I don't have to do it here, but so, I appreciate her comments.
Okay, thank you. All right. I've got a couple announcements. A couple of announcements, sorry. They're better lower expectations here. They're just regular stuff. No, it's going to be great. On March 6th at 5 p.m. will be the next meeting of the Board of Commissioners in room 326 at 200 College Street. On March 13th at 3 p.m., the Board of Commissioners and the Asheville City Council will hold a joint meeting in the first floor of the conference room at 200 College Street. On March 13th at 5:30 p.m., the Board of Commissioners will participate in a ribbon cutting for the newly renovated and the new Health and Human Services building at 40 Cox Avenue in Asheville. Is there any need for a closed session this evening? All right, great. Is there a motion to adjourn? All in favor, please say aye. All right, we're adjourned.